Alright, if you don't know by now, I'm Liz, the Splitsday DIY, and we have the next installment in our XyloPi project. Now, the story so far, doing this kind of robot xylophone project with a Raspberry Pi, involves the making of some PCBs. The first PCBs that came in, the hat for the Pi worked, which is going to control the motors that will eventually strike the xylophone keys. However, the actual boards that drive those motors didn't work. And there are 2 videos out there kind of going through all that. So I've redesigned those boards, and they're currently at Fab right now with Osh Park, trying out that After Dark finish, so that'll be cool to see. However, before that, I did get this board in perfect purple, and it is a power board, because I realized while I was redesigning those solenoid driver boards, I need to supply power, and I don't really want to just like solder something directly. So I made this little board, and it has an on-off switch, which if you're a long-time viewer of the channel, you know that's something I struggle to remember, but I remembered. And then a DC jack will go here, which will take in our 5-volt supply. And then I added an LED. There'll be an indicator, so whether or not it's on or off, and also a nice way to test to make sure power is actually getting there. Little resistor spot right there. And then we have our positive and ground leads that will daisy chain to the solenoid boards. It's fairly simple design. Like I'm literally just, it's basically just having it so that there's an on-off switch to allow for the 5-volt like DC jack power supply to provide power, and then soldering directly here. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna solder up this board, test it. I actually have the solenoid circuit on a breadboard, so we can test it out with some alligator clips here and see how it goes. We'll also be able to tell if it's working if the LED lights up. So let's get to soldering. Okay, all soldered up, for better or worse. We've been having a lot of rain, and I find that when it's humid, like, my solder doesn't flow as well. But anyway, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plug in the power supply, flip the switch. If the light turns on, that's a good sign. And then we can kind of go forward from there. So they didn't work. Yeah, and I'm super bummed. I could not have been more disappointed. I did record like a whole thing afterwards. You may see bits and pieces of it depending on how I edit this, but you won't see the whole thing because I was really upset, and I've had a shitty week, and when those PCBs came in, that was like awesome. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to be able to assemble those on Friday. It's going to be great. Shout out to my cats. And then they didn't work because of a dumb mistake I did. And I felt so defeated and sad and frustrated and just not in a good place. As I'm sure everyone has had at one point or another. Especially, you know, when you're like a creative person and whatever you do, whether you draw or you make weird electronics projects that may or may not involve 3D printing a ghost and hot glue and some LEDs in, those things keep you sane when you're working like a 9-to-5. Like just knowing that your brain has that outlet, it just keeps you a little happier. So I know for me, if I feel like I waste time in like finishing or working on a project when I know I have that already limited amount of time, just the nature of things, I get a little down. So basically I'm not going to make myself edit that like sad sack after effect. I will show you what was wrong in the boards and let my past self explain what happened. Well, you may be asking, how do we get here? Such an abrupt cut. Such carnage. Well, when we last convened in the footage, I had finished soldering it up and I was going to be testing out to see if the board worked. So what I did was I pressed stop on the camera, and I plugged in the DC jack, and the plan was to turn back on the camera to throw the switch to see if the LED lit up. Well, when I plugged in the DC jack, the LED, blew up, so I knew something was wrong. So I went to troubleshooting, and basically, I screwed up the board, which is like the running theme of this project. The way I did this board was I did a ground plane on the bottom and a VCC on the top, and it seemed like a good idea. I thought I was being fancy, and I think that's the problem. This is kind of confirmed by the fact that I cut the switch off and the LED is still lighting up. The LED blew up because it was a cheap LED that was actually only rated for 3 volts. And this is 5 volts. Okay, and now, instead of staring at the boards and feeling sorry for ourselves in a basement, does anything sound sadder? I don't think it does. I can show you an eagle what I did when I thought I was being fancy, and I should have kept it simple. You'd think I would have learned, but no. Alright, so here's the boards as I sent them off. My thought with this board, which is very simple, as I discussed in the earlier part that I filmed. Like, basically, it's just a DC jack to bring in the 5 volt DC power supply that I'm going to use, and then just a switch to turn it on and off, so I have a little bit more control over the power. I threw on an LED to act as like a status LED with a resistor, as you can see right here, and then we've got our 2 outputs for power and ground that will daisy chain to the solenoid boards. So if we look at our board layout, more experienced people probably see the problem immediately. What I was thinking was, since I only had the 2 signals, VCC and ground, then I could do planes, which, yes, but let's take away the ground layer, so we just have our VCC. Do you see what the issue is? Everything's connected, right? Because it's all VCC. Yeah, it's all connected. Like, this circuit doesn't give a shit about the fact that there's a switch, man. It's all on. And that's why when I plugged in the DC jack, that cheapo 3 volt LED, even though the switch was off, popped a bit, because it was just power. So doing a plane for the positive signal was a terrible idea. Shouldn't have done that. The ground plane is fine. You can keep the ground plane for days, but no, not this. So that's why. If I had just done this, my original routing, it would have worked fine. They'd be perfect. We wouldn't be having this conversation right now. And that's why I'm mad at myself. I'm frustrated. But one thing I hadn't mentioned yet in the beginning of the video was this footprint for the switch, even though I compared the data sheet for the switch that this library is from and the switch that I got from Adafruit. They said they were the exact same footprint. Didn't quite fit into this Eagle footprint, so I can fix that. I can take the opportunity to fix that. I want to make these holes for the connections a little bit bigger, actually, so they can accept a higher gauge wire. Trying to stay positive. But like I said, I feel like everyone feels this way at some point when they're working on projects. It's just, whether it be creative or work projects or anything like that. Guess the important thing is to just keep going. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do anything with this PCB right now, because it's 10:47 p.m. on a Friday. And I'm tired, so probably go watch a movie. And that'll be that. Even while I was filming, like, after the figuring out, like, what was wrong with the board, I really did think, like, I'm not even gonna ever make a video about this. I'm not gonna even tell anyone that these boards didn't work. Because I was, like, ashamed of myself. I did not feel great about it. But, with this XyloPi project in particular, I had told myself, like, I want to document everything about it. And so this is part of that. And I have always tried to share the good and the bad, the successes and challenges. There's a reframing of the things I do, because I think it is real. It's really what happens. And there's so much these days of like glossing over that or ignoring that exists. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm just trying to keep it very real here and hope that by sharing my mistakes, then you won't make those mistakes, or you'll not feel alone in making mistakes, or maybe you'll be kinder to people when they share their mistakes, and we can kind of create and have a conversation that creates this safer environment for us to create and exist in. Might be the hour. I'm starting to wax poetic a bit, and as a result, I'm gonna cut this. But thank you for watching. Hopefully, good things will come from this. I think I kind of need it, not gonna lie. But that's gonna do it for this one. And until next time, this has been Blitz City DIY, and Winnie, and Harriet.